Recently, there was a hangout on Nicholas Goroff's channel called Voicegasm. For those who don't know, Nicholas Goroff has a fairly decent following on YouTube. He has a few thousand subscribers. But the names he gets on his hangouts are comparatively huge. The hangout in question included Kraut and T, who you might have seen on my Clusterfuck hangout, Focus Break, also known as Habib, Dr. Randomacam, the scary talented MRA or men's rights advocate YouTuber, and Sargon of Akkad, the undisputed king of YouTube anti-feminism. Now those last two names, other than being, let's be frank, the most famous, were also where the topic of this video comes from. See, in that stream, there was an argument. As I'm sure you're all aware, the term MRA is often used by feminists and social justice warriors as pretty much a slur against anti-feminists and cultural libertarians of all stripes. You must have had the conversation where you're arguing against a feminist when your opponent pulls out the trump card and calls you the most damning of all labels, an MRA. Right? Well, Sargon of Akkad is of the opinion that the term MRA is a lost cause. That if we abandon the term completely and just band together with the other cultural libertarians and freethinkers under the banner of something like humanist or egalitarian, then we will have a much greater chance of defeating the social justice warrior threat.
Visualize it like a strategy game. They've got a massive army encamped on the label MRA. We've got no power there. You know, I mean, it would take a ridiculous number of people to adopt the label MRA to make the label MRA ours, because it's so well fortified by the feminists, right? But we don't need to, because we've got other labels that are basically huge stacks of men, stacks of people we're just leaving off the battlefield. You know, look at what the average person identifies as. Are they going to say no to Enlightenment values? Are they going to say no to secularism? You know, are they going to say no to human rights?
This is something that's been talked about quite a lot since that hangout. Dr. Randomacam did a follow-up video shortly afterwards. Vernaculus weighed in on the use of the term MRA shortly after that. Nicholas Goroff himself did a long video response about it. In general, the responses have defended Dr. Randomacam's use of the term men's rights advocate on the grounds that it is an important, very descriptive label under which a lot of great work has been done. Because of this work, the argument goes, it would be unfair, disrespectful to expect MRAs to drop the term in spite of the tactical difficulties it may cause for the broader anti-social justice warrior movement if they don't. In terms of part of that, I couldn't agree more. I think MRAs have done some great work getting the word out about rights that people have been denied for a long time just for having a penis. The lack of fair treatment in custody hearings, harsher penalties in courts overall, circumcision. And that's just to name a few. But the part that I don't agree with is that concession, that defending the term MRA is some kind of a tactical misstep. In fact, the opposite is true. Not defending the term men's rights advocate is the single biggest tactical misstep that the anti-SJW community could possibly make. It was Sargon making the strategy argument, so I'll address this to him. Mr. Ovacard, I think a very big part of being successful as a movement is to make sure that when our side has a public debate with a feminist, say, that we win. Not for the feminist, mind you, but for the audience. You see, it's only very rarely that we're going to convince someone that we're actually arguing with. But the audience might be full of unaffiliated fence-sitters, ready to drop one way or the other. So with that in mind, what happens when someone from our side makes the totally legitimate argument that women aren't oppressed in the West because there are no rights that men have that women don't, and are in fact rights that women have that men don't? What happens then when the feminist says, "Oh my God, you're just an MRA"? And what happens then when the person from our side makes an argument that basically amounts to, "No, I'm not an MRA. I'm just aiming for MZAs." It doesn't matter that we're only saying we're not an MRA because the word's been turned into a slur. Our side just sounds stupid at best and dishonest at worst. The fence-sitter drops comfortably into the feminist camp. But wait, there's more. A key strategy of the social justice warriors is to make everything about identity politics. Think about how they arbitrarily carve out the good terms and bad terms all the time. I mean, think about how coloured person is apparently racist and person of colour is apparently progressive. It's all about forgetting that words have meanings, when it's convenient for them to do so, and just focusing on the politics and, frankly, fashion of the terms in question. If we abandon the label MRA, but continue defending men's rights, we're giving the enemy a massive advantage by allowing the debate to become about identity politics rather than facts and reason. Keeping the argument in the realm of facts and reason is the most effective way to show what charlatans the identity politicians are. Now, you talk about how the term MRA is heavily fortified by the social justice warriors, and it would be a waste of effort to go after it. And you're right on part of that. The term is heavily fortified, and that's why it will be all the more crushing of a defeat when we take it from them. Not only will it strongly weaken the favoured weapon of the SJWs, which is of course identity politics, but it will deal a serious blow to the main use of that weapon: demonizing straight, white, cisgender men. The basic raison d'etre of the regressives we're talking about is to tell people they're victims of something they can't change, and none of their failings are their fault. They don't need to work on themselves. The world is just against them because they're gay, or black, or female, or whatever. This idea is inherently appealing, so people jump on it in droves. But they still need some class of people to blame for all of this oppression, so they carve out a group they label as the enemy: the cis straight white men. To this group they have a different pitch. You are guilty of oppressing the rest of society just for existing. You need this ideology of intersexual feminism or social justice or whatever we're peddling that day in order to atone for this. What better way can you think of to kick the legs out from under such an ideology as to defend the rights of the group that they say are the oppressors? It's pretty hard to call someone an oppressor when there's a visible movement dedicated to restoring the rights that they don't have. If we can make the label of men's rights advocate, or activist if you prefer, both work, if we can make that label even somewhat accepted, it will undermine the most fundamental aspects of the identity politics-obsessed social justice warriors that you want so badly to defeat. They will have no demon left to fight. How can you say anyone is oppressed if everyone is? I mean, why do you think the regressives fortified that term so well in the first place? Maybe it's because that's the one weak spot from which their whole ideology crumbles. Sargon, you basically taunted Dr. McCam with your incredulity about the idea that the men's rights advocates could be the ones that defeat feminism. I hope I've come some way to showing you that men's rights advocacy, the defending of the rights of the so-called oppressor, is poison not to only feminism, but to the entirety of the regressive left. Now, I've heard you say that you're in favour of at least some of the goals of MRAs. Therefore, you are an advocate, to some extent, for the rights of men. Now, I'm not saying you need to wear that label on your sleeve. We need the casual, not really practicing MRAs, the ones who don't talk about it much, just accept the label because, of course, they are in favour of men's rights. But what I am saying is that if you really want to overcome the regressive left, if you really want to defend Enlightenment principles against the identity politicians that would destroy them, then what better way can you think of than to defend the term MRA?